Many people believe that effective speaking skills are the key to persuading others. And yes, to some extent, they are partly right. But there's something often overlooked: silence. Sometimes, speaking less can be more impressive and functional than speaking more. Speaking effectively or speaking beautifully. In this video, I want to talk about how sometimes silence, sometimes speaking less, can be beneficial and powerful. I would describe speaking less and knowing when to be silent as a kind of white, innocent manipulation technique. Now, where does it work? Silence fundamentally makes you stronger, especially in one-on-one relationships. You're trying to prove something to the other person, but in such a relationship, the other person doesn't feel that you are really present. You are talking, explaining, saying, the better I explain this matter, the better this person will understand it, and the more they will be influenced by me. You think the key is how well you explained it, but in real relationships that is never the key. What really makes people feel good and be influenced is this: if I am the other person, I care about how much I am cared for, how much I am being listened to, and how seriously I am taken in this communication. You say, I take you seriously, I do this, I do that, but it means nothing. If you stay silent and listen with your full attention to the other person, guess what happens? The other person feels very valuable, and in that moment, you influence them. People who talk too much tend to speak about things they shouldn't, or about things they don't fully know. And every word you say opens a part of yourself for the other person to see. When you speak about topics you are not well prepared for, the other person will see that you are basically empty inside. Here's what you should know. If you talk too much, the connection with the other person starts to break down. But if you talk less and mostly choose to be silent, people imagine that which they can't see as full and meaningful. So when you build your personal image, you should never talk about things you don't know. Skip those topics completely. That's silent emptiness. It's incredibly impressive. As I said, people tend to see you as mysterious, charismatic, and stronger in such situations. If you avoid empty talk and mostly stay silent or speak less, others will interpret you as a wise person. Look around. For example, there's a documentary on Netflix about cults. You can watch it for free. There's something very striking in that documentary. The leader sometimes does a one-week silence retreat and doesn't leave his room for days. As a psychologist, I observe his facial expressions and think, this person is not immature, chasing desires.
If I were around him and he just shuts up, becomes silent, listens and looks at you with a slight smile while you talk excitedly, trying to convince him, but he just doesn't react. After a while, you see that a silent person is incredibly wise, deep, and sometimes even seems to have supernatural powers. Of course, our goal is not to create such an effect deliberately. But if you want to influence people and obtain this wise appearance, choosing to speak less is helpful. Sometimes just smiling quietly is very effective. There is something called therapist's silence. It's a method we use to help the other person open up and tell deeper things about themselves. Many people talk about silence, but when they are clearly exposed to silence, they become very uncomfortable. It's an interesting kind of discomfort we have. Where do people feel this discomfort? Therapists use silence this way. Suppose the client is telling a very impactful, troubling or traumatic story, but they act as if it is not important. For example, I say, John, how did this event affect you? The client says, not much. I stay silent in that moment, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, even 30 seconds, and then the discomfort begins. Because I remain silent, the other person feels compelled to say more. Usually, people who initially do not want to talk end up opening themselves more in this silence. This helps us reach their untold emotions more easily. This can also be used in job interviews. For example, the interviewer asks you a question. You answer, but then they stay silent. You feel so uncomfortable that you want to say more, explain more. You can use this method especially with people you want to get to know better. If you ask a question and then stay silent for 15-20 seconds, nobody dies, but the other person will definitely feel motivated to say more about themselves. There is also something else.
People who talk a lot about their goals and dreams usually act less. Do they talk a lot because they act less, or do they act less because they talk a lot? I think it's the second one. Talking too much prevents them from taking action. People who talk a lot about their dreams usually feel a sense of excitement and satisfaction just by talking about it. Because of this, they are not motivated enough to face the challenges and anxieties to make those dreams real. So we can say this: people who talk less or don't talk much about their goals and plans tend to be more successful in taking action in real life. Therefore, you should talk less about your goals and dreams, or at least be careful about it. I think this will be useful for you. Another situation where silence can be effective is when someone asks you a question, and your answer can create a very impressive impact. You should know, in such a situation, before answering, look the other person in the eyes confidently, stay silent for 15 seconds to think, then say, "This is how I think about it." Compared to answering immediately, this approach makes you appear much more effective and valuable. That's why using 15 seconds of silence before answering can be useful at first. When trying to influence others, there is an inverse relationship between how many words you use and how seriously you are taken. The more you speak and feel the need to explain yourself, the less the other person respects you. So you need to learn to be economical when expressing yourself. If you express yourself with fewer words and less waste, the other person will respect your words and your personality much more. Thank you for listening, dear friend. Take good care of yourself. See you soon.